English translation 471st Contact. Part 1 Tuesday, 16th of September 2008, 14 to 16 hours.
Oh, what joy and surprise. Just now, I was in the kitchen where I had to check on things. Because there are two passive members over there, Hans-Jürgen Bayer and Klaus Wentz from Germany, who prepare fruit and put it into plastic bags. I then have to shrink wrap them, because this work is currently incumbent on me, because Silvano is in the civil defense and cannot do it. As a result, I am also unable to do my weekly grocery shopping today. As far as shrink wrapping is concerned, I have just spoken to them, and also about climate change, which is now beginning to move faster than it did a year ago. Hello, dear friend. Have you been here long?
Already a good hour. Greetings, Edward. You made a true observation about climate change, because the rate of change has actually doubled in the last 12 months. As a result, temperature conditions have also changed more rapidly, especially in the Arctic regions, where the temperature has risen by around 5 degrees, leading to major melting of ice sheets and icebergs.
You should have called me. So then my observation was true about the rapid increase in climate change. Thanks for your clarification.
There was no need to call you, my friend, because I was not bored.
Also good. Look, Ptah, here's the last part that I want to put into the Goblet of the Truth as a prediction. If you will please read it.
I do not have to anymore, because I already read the whole thing while I was here in your computer, where you already copied it for me. In any case, I assume that you did it for me, and that's also why you turned on the computer and put the writing in order.
That I put it into the computer for you is of correctness, but that I turned it on more than an hour ago is because I wanted to work but was stopped by various things. The prophetic predictive file just came up when I turned on the computer, so I didn't set it up specifically because I didn't know you were coming here today. But if you have already read the whole thing, then I will add it to our conversation report at this point.
What is prophetic and predictive for the third millennium is to be announced comprehensively.
When you human beings of the earth do not turn to the truth of creation and its laws and recommendations in the present third millennium, when you do not change for the better and good and do not follow the true rules of life as they exist in the creational laws and recommendations, then all evil events of all kinds will expand into constantly worse consequences. The creational natural laws and recommendations are written in the Goblet of the Truth and in the spiritual teaching, which is the teaching of the truth, teaching of the spirit, teaching of the life, the observance of which is of vital importance. But if you human beings continue not to follow the laws and recommendations of creation, then the evils and catastrophes of all kinds that have been appearing for some time now and are also presently appearing all over the earth will in future increase to even more malignant excesses. And if you do not change for the better, the good and the best, then all evils will be much worse all over the world than those that have been appearing for decades and also at present. And the coming events will be such as they have never been experienced, lived and seen in the world until today. But a change for the better, good and best can only take place when through you, human beings of the earth, there will be true and reasonable thinking and acting in the future. And this primarily through your rulers and other powerful ones, who have to lead you as a people to the best and good. But this reasonable thinking and acting is also demanded from the individual of your entire mankind, as well as from you as such as a whole. And only then, when your thoughts are cultivated in a true way and the actions are determined and carried out in the right way, and this according to the urgency of necessity in relation to the necessary change, can success be given. But if this change is not initiated and carried out, then it is inevitable that the prophecies will be fulfilled, as it is with the predictions that are fixed in relation to their fulfillment and will certainly become evil reality. taken as a whole. In all things of your existence as human beings of the earth, a change for the better, for the good, and for the best is inevitable if everything is to develop into a good value in the end. But if this change is not accepted and not carried out, then do not be surprised if nothing flourishes for the better, good and best, but the negative. Bad and evil things come true, which are called prophetic, but which are therefore not specifically drawn as prophecies, that it is not possible to distinguish between prophecy and prediction. And this for the important reason that not only individual factors are taken up for change, but as a whole everything of all circumstances. And this must therefore be the case, because in a real effort, only through an all-encompassing change can the better, the good, and the best be brought about, namely when everything is taken into account comprehensively. Therefore, the following prophetic and predictive information is to be given, which in the end is still to be said by I, Billy Edward Albert Meyer, as the last herald of the sevenfold line of the Nacademian. With the third millennium, you human beings of the earth have stepped out of the darkness of the last 2 millennia into the darkness of a labyrinth of wrongdoings that is impenetrable to you. And already in the 20th century, you have created and continue to create and breed all kinds of evil that brought and continue to bring untold harm to you, nature, and the planet. Your greed for profit, you human beings of Earth, is increasing more and more, and the rulers of your world are plunging your populations of all states into deeper and deeper misery, making over your head high-handed and power-imbued decisions and leaving you as a people not a power of destiny. It is all about power and money, and from now on everything will also become worse in this respect, as well as the disasters of all kinds in nature, in the climate, and among you human beings, and this through the rapidly increasing and uncontrollable overpopulation. Everything is directed more and more towards hierarchy. Money, income, profit and gain, as well as profitability through the profit and power greedy. But this also spreads more and more in you individual human beings and in your whole peoples. As a result, you become more and more indifferent to one another, suspicious of one another, and increasingly apathetic, disinterested, sluggish, and blunt in your interpersonal relationships, destroying simple human connections and also ruining entire families. Many of you will, in such intolerable situations, let blazing rage soar up within you and because of it will harass others or even take bloody revenge upon them. But the trust among you human beings will also more and more dwindle away, whereby also worse and worse forms of jealousy and hatred will rise in many of you. Be it as a result of a different opinion or another faith, because of money, possessions, or goods, or simply because the face, the body, the clothing, or the behavior of the other person tempts to it. So more and more violence will reign among you. And this also only because some and others find it simply good and satisfying to harass, beat, spit on, kick, or humiliate others, even accepting the death of the tortured. And violence, murder and wanton as well as malicious and warlike destruction will also increasingly rule among you in the future, which will also be carried out as a whole into the world space near the Earth, and this not only then, especially when world bodies near the Earth are populated by human beings of the Earth. More and more you human beings of the Earth want to seize the power of creation, in which you, the longer and more know not boundaries, and imagine yourselves to be the highest power of life, of the earth, and of the universe. But that will take revenge, because sooner or later all your activities will change to your own harm. Consequently, you will fall into a deep abyss. The high buildings, which rise into the sky as skyscrapers, collapse in on themselves, while the fields lie fallow and therefore no more harvests can be brought in. And the longer and the more it will be that you as individual human beings make your own laws according to which you terrorize the environment and your fellow human beings. As it is already the case in many places through extremists, terrorists, young people, haters, vindictive and confused people, as well as self-important people who take punishment into their own hands. Many of you are falling back into barbarism, and more hunger will rule the world because many natural foods are being misused by profit and power-hungry people for purposes other than food, such as biofuels, to power machines and engines. Lubricants are also made with food for this purpose, and these are just two of many purposes in relation to food abuse. The climate change, caused by the overpopulation of your earthly humanity, brings with it tremendous natural disasters that are constantly increasing and also interfere with the lives of yourselves. So in the future, ever greater droughts and cold spells, as well as tremendous storms of all kinds, rainstorms and firestorms caused by forest fires, will sweep over the whole earth and will bring tremendous destruction, as will also be the increase of earthquakes and seaquakes, landslides, tidal waves, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions, floods, and high water. As a result of this, hundreds of thousands and even millions of you human beings will lose your lives in the course of the coming times, while others will not be able to cope with all the misery and will seek death with their own hands, while still others will turn more and more to drugs, some of which will be legalized by the unreasonableness of the rulers, because they are too stupid to recognize the danger of drug addiction and its consequences, or because they themselves profit from the drug trade. The fact that the body, the psyche, and even the lives of addicts are destroyed in the process, as well as the fact that more and more murders and suicides, rapes, criminal acts are taking place, and that many of you human beings are behaving like wild beasts, is something that continues to concern very few, just as it has for decades. So crimes and capital crimes and violence continue to grow inexorably in proportion to the growing overpopulation. The violence of young people is increasing, as is the carrying and use of weapons of all kinds, which they use without hesitation, injuring and even killing innocent people, as is also the case with violent extreme groups. Very many of you attach less and less importance to the physical and psychological integrity of your fellow human beings, whereby you harass your fellow human beings, hurt them physically and psychologically, and do not even shy away from killing and murdering them. Through this, the life of many of you becomes a true catastrophe and hell, which only ends when you are taken away by death. But that will not be enough in the future, because the addiction to pleasure and enjoyment and to holiday trips increases just as inexorably and brings with it greater and greater evils. As also you, as men and women, soon again push each other aside and separate from each other when you recklessly find each other and marry, or you join together in alleged friendship and comradeship. And it will always be more that you, as men and women, get involved with each other uncontrolled and without knowing each other closer, sexually with each other, and in wild passion produce unwanted children who grow up without father and never get to know him. And you will continue to spread epidemics like AIDS, syphilis, tuberculosis, and other scourges in this way, so that the evil in this relationship will spread from bed to bed and from human beings to human beings. Thus, in the future, sexuality, which you human beings mistakenly think of Earth as true love, will ultimately become an evil scourge. Good morality will be increasingly lost among you, as will righteousness, reverence for life, love, decency, and justice. Real friendship, comradeship, covenants, and love are already in short supply and are still expanding, and freedom has truly become and will remain a farce for a long time, as is peace. This is because the only thing that is still being done is to do only what is popular at the moment, without any responsibility and completely unscrupulous. So more and more parents are abusing their own children, and siblings are abusing each other sexually, just as rapes are increasing between woman and woman, man and man. While many clergymen and pedagogues, etc., are abusing their subjects sexually, just as more and more pedophiles are committing sexual offenses against children, as is already common practice in many cases. And just as fornication and sexual degeneration have already been publicly propagated for years now via cinema and television, this is also going to be much more widespread in the future. The one who speaks and teaches the truth about creation and its laws and recommendations does not want to be heard by you human beings of the earth for a long time yet. Because your belief in all the false religions, sects, ideologies, and various false philosophies, as well as in politics, holds you captive as if with claws of steel. Consequently, you will continue to let these and the falsehoods of the false prophets be spread by the religious and sectarian clergymen around whom you gather in blind faith, are in bondage to them, and listen to their lies that you should carry weapons to fight against those who teach the truth of creation and its laws and recommendations. And the false prophets and you believers in them will speak about justice for this, but which you really do not know. Therefore, you will murder in your delusion and fanaticism, as it is already done through religious fanatic terrorists. In the end, there will no longer be order among you human beings of the earth because vices and addictions, greed for power, jealousy, hatred, revenge, and retribution will spread everywhere. Many of you give yourselves up to massacre your fellow human beings, so the boundlessness of murder and destruction will more and more take hold all over the world. So it will be as never before since ancient times that you human beings will judge by your blood and faith, that you as parents will repudiate your children, and you as adults and young people will repudiate the old. And more you will close your eyes to crimes that happen before your eyes, to rape in relation to helpless and defenseless women, to sexual abuse in relation to children, and to malicious and often fatal acts of violence against old, handicapped, weak, and defenseless fellow human beings. More and more, all kinds of human achievements are being deliberately and maliciously destroyed, plundered, and thefts and fraud are being committed, just as lies and slander are also becoming more and more prevalent for one's own benefit. Through the greed for profit of those of you who have to decide on food and its cultivation and utilization, more and more starving human beings will populate the earth. And it will be terrible to see how the bones of the starving penetrate through the skin, and how their wounds will fester, smear, and be infested with vermin. And it will become more and more terrible in relation to the fact that many of you human beings will be driven from your home and hunted and killed like harmful game, while many others will flee and lose their lives in many ways while fleeing. But as it is already today, the majority of you human beings of the earth are not being paid attention to, because you turn your face away from the suffering of the refugees and do nothing so that they can live, work, and lead a life in dignity in their homeland. More and more you care only for yourselves, and you calm your bad conscience only by giving cheap alms for the poor and suffering. But at the same time, you are careful that your name as a good man is on everyone's lips, and that you receive the alms you have given back umpteen times. Truly, the price of human lives is getting lower and lower, and more you human beings are traded as slaves, whether for work slavery, prostitution, mercenary purposes, or organ trafficking, for which healthy people among you are robbed, abducted, sold, and slaughtered like cattle, and robbed of their intestines, organs, and body parts. And all the profiteers among you who trade with it or are yourselves murderers, butchers and butchers, you will even fight over the blood of the murdered, as well as over their skin and bones. And this is already so common practice at the time of the beginning of the third millennium. And so it will become much worse in the coming time in this way. And trafficking in human beings is not only increasing in adults, especially young women for prostitution, but also in men for the purpose of work slavery, and also in children who are forced to work and sexually abused by pedophiles. And everything is becoming more and more prevalent in these forms, so that the inviolability of your human dignity is more and more disregarded and forgotten. So it will be that you human beings of Earth will become more and more brutalized, more unscrupulous, and more addicted to cruelty, Lying and deceit will rule the world more and more. And this through the beggar among you as well as through you, who live in normal and in good prosperity as good citizens, and this will be so up to you rich and ruling. So as never before in the history of earthly mankind, lies and deceit as well as fraud, appearance and slander and governmental servitude are held as truth, and more disaster is built up on it. And it will be more and more that you human beings will be treated like animals for slaughter, marked with numbers and data, which are implanted in you in form of electronic data chips, whereby you are completely controlled and deprived of freedom by the authorities, offices, and rulers. But in your naivety, you think that you are free human beings, but are indeed serfs of the governments. Thus the offices, authorities, and rulers will rule over you as it has never been done before, so that you will no longer determine your own destiny in the community, for this is done by those who exercise perfect power and control over you. Thus each of you will be a serf and slave of the authorities, offices, and rulers, or of those power men and their vassals who hold the power in this respect. In the early third millennium, there would still be time for you human beings of Earth to prevent this, when you would unite as mankind against these future threatening machinations through the rulers and the scientists and technicians in bondage to them, to prevent what is threatening in the aforementioned relationship. The overpopulation on Earth, this must be said again and again, will continue to increase steadily through the unreasonableness and irresponsibility of your humanity on Earth. But this also happens through the procreative and just as irresponsible machinations of governments, their offices and authorities, as well as the sectarian nonsense of the Catholic Church, or rather of the Pope, clerics, and priests, which can already be called criminal, and which misconstrues multiply yourselves as a lying law of God. So, you human beings become more and have less and less room to live, and this space ultimately becomes so narrow that you kick each other to death. And you will set yourselves in motion more and more, cross the borders of your homeland and leave it and die in the process, whereby, however, also very many of you drift aimlessly through the world, which also has the consequence that you mix and unite yourselves more and more with each other, whereby more and more families are torn apart and more mixed peoples arise, while the pure peoples disappear more and more. But through this, you also become stranger to each other, which also has the consequence that more and more hatred and enmities arise, which again leads to constantly new conflicts between individuals and in the end also to murder, manslaughter, crimes, and to wars with enormous destruction. So many of you fall into degeneration whereby you lose your own leadership, go in all directions, and fall from one misfortune to another. And through the religions, sects, ideologies, and philosophies which are subject to falsehood and lies, as well as to deceit and falsehood, you human beings of the earth are for the time being even more misguided and even less in accordance with the creational laws and recommendations, so that you live far away according to them and do not obey them. And indeed, it will still be a long time before you act in this way and want to direct your life only according to your own laws, completely outside of the laws and recommendations as these are given through the creation, which has anchored everything primevally in nature and in the entire existence of the universe. But as you disregard and despise the creational laws and recommendations, so it will also be that you trample on the natural guidance of nature in this respect in such a way that women will only bear offspring whose sex is so predetermined by taking selective precautions in procreation, which is more and more no longer done by natural means but by artificial means. It will also be the order of the day that in natural procreation the fruit in the womb will be killed without any vital reason if it does not correspond sexually to the wishes of the mother or father. It will be in future times that very many of you human beings on earth will consider yourselves to be creation itself in your religious, sectarian sense as God. The powerful ones of all kinds among you are seizing more and more land and goods and other possessions, including also women who keep them as prostitutes or as objects of prestige. This, while the poor and the weak are more and more considered and treated as subhumans and vermin by the powerful among you, if you, who belong to it, live increasingly in fear and hatred takes on the most poisonous forms in you. But all this is only the beginning, for in secret, a powerful organization of rulers and powerful people and many lackeys who belong to them is emerging from your humanity, creating a secret order of darkness with its own evil laws and orders, which are directed towards hatred against the poor and weak, as well as against the economically imprisoned and all ordinary citizens. And their desire is to seize more and more power, more and more money, and the perfect dominion over the whole earth and your humanity, thus spreading their evil dominion over the world, supported by the vassals of all kinds who are in bondage to them and greedy for blood and profit. Even the mighty of the economy feel the power and obey the evil laws of the Dark Order, which their dangerous and deadly poison of hatred spreads everywhere and into everything, and against all those who are not of the same mind as the Dark Force. Thus you human beings of Earth are no longer very active, but walk in idleness and with empty eyes and do not know what to do and where to go, because you have nothing more to do that brings you joy and good reward. And it is you, human beings of the Earth, young and old, who can no longer put down roots in life, humiliated and hopelessly wandering around, without work and without home, with the result that you fight against yourselves in all things and you hate your existence in order to finally end it yourselves, as has been the case more and more since the 20th century and will be even more so in the future. So this time has already begun with the third millennium, in which these things have already found the beginning in a fast way, and the longer, the more they develop faster and faster. As a result, the number of diseases and epidemics is also increasing, as are the diseases that severely affect drinking water and bodies of water through toxins of all kinds, as well as the air and soil and the food that grows on trees and bushes and in fields, forests, gardens, and greenhouses. And still your efforts to counteract and stop all these evils are in vain, for they are growing day by day, even hour by hour and minute by minute, and are becoming more and more extensive and catastrophic in relation to the rapidly increasing overpopulation. So you, human beings of the Earth, want to resurrect all that what has been destroyed up to now through your fault and unreasonableness as well as irresponsibility, as you also want to preserve what still remained intact, whereby, however, all your efforts in this regard are in vain because you do not come to a true conclusion in reason. And the only true decision is that through a worldwide birth control, the overpopulation will be radically stopped, and as a result, your earthly humanity will be reduced to a planetary and natural measure, whereby this measure is set at 529 million human beings according to nature and the planet in relation to the whole Earth. Through your foolishness, human beings of the Earth, the rainforests are dying faster and faster, which also causes deserts to form faster and more extensive, while the glaciers and poles are melting, causing the waters of the seas to rise and swallow up valuable land, driving millions of you from your homes and from the land you were able to farm. Beside this, ever more violent lightning storms will rage, setting many things on fire and killing many of you, and also your cattle, while ever greater flash floods of water will fall from the clouds, like true deluges that destroy everything, flooding and claiming many lives. This while elsewhere droughts dry up the land and tremendous fires destroy the forests, villages, towns, and your homes. Through all this, and through the exhaust fumes from chimneys, factory chimneys, and engines of all kinds, which eject fine dust and CO2, the air is becoming more and more impregnated with smoke and poisonous emissions. And also through radioactivity, biotoxins, and chemicals, the air is being poisoned, causing many of you human beings to fall ill and die. And further on, violent earthquakes and seaquakes will shake the earth, and this in an ever more severe way, whereby whole towns will be destroyed and made level with the ground. As also very much else will be destroyed, which was built through unreasonableness and will continue to be built, although the prophetic and predictive warning is against it. But in this way, mountain slopes and mudslides, etc., will also bury dwellings and villages underneath themselves. While elsewhere, through tectonic movements and through underground mine constructions, cavities, and watercourses, the earth will open up, and dwellings and other buildings will sink into the ground. You human beings of the earth, however, you do not want to learn from this, for you are stubborn and do not want to hear the prophetic and predictive warnings. And in this stubbornness, many of you who are not well off and poor as well as light-shy rabble among you degenerate more and more when the plundering takes on worse and worse forms. Especially there where others of you human beings get into trouble, have to flee their dwellings and have to leave their possessions behind. Just as the sun already shines dangerously at the beginning of the third millennium, because the ozone belt surrounding the earth is badly damaged and full of holes, so in future it will burn the earth even more and bring much disaster on the whole world and all life forms. So also on you human beings, who are more and more attacked by skin cancer and severe eye diseases, etc. But not only the sun will bring great disaster upon your earth humans and the planet, because submarine volcanoes will also bring great destruction and bring the waters of the oceans to a boil, whereby still very many water creatures, which have not yet been exterminated by you human beings, will find death. That, while through these underwater and also subterranean movements, forces are created through which certain continents or parts of them disappear into the waters. But all this also contributes to the fact that you are like humble dogs among yourselves in deceitful belief in religions and sects, and tremble erroneously in the delusion that God punishes the world for its misdeeds, whereby you do not recognize, however, that all evil and all catastrophes were and are caused solely through your own fault, whereby the ever-increasing overpopulation is the main cause of all evil degenerations. The sects, which have emerged from all religions, ideologies, and philosophies, will in future become increasingly greedy, cunning, unscrupulous, and aggressive, also using modern science and the internet for their criminal and irresponsible purposes. In this way, they use everything criminally, including suicide and murder, and terrorist schemes are also part of the lies of salvation, which mislead and enslave new disciples and believers. The religions, sects, ideologies, and false philosophies unfold like poisonous, dangerous viruses that adapt to the changing environment, and they are weaving their webs of super-modern, electronic soul-catching, ever more perfidiously and by ever more modern means, while they are also casting a spell on more and more academics and other educated people among you. And another evil that more and more academics and other highly educated people are being recruited into sectarianism is the fact that through them you seek to pacify your delusion, which is to clone animals and human beings according to your ideas and wishes, because you want to get back what you have lost and are losing through death. And you do this while you irresponsibly exterminate species after species and species after species of living beings in the wild, in the air, in the earth, on the ground, and in the waters, for whatever threadbare reasons. Thus you raise yourselves to the evil of all evil, while you imagine yourselves to be good, and as a creation, which in your religious and sectarian delusion you completely misjudge and imagine as deity. More and more fear, poison, and hopelessness will come over you human beings of the earth. And already your children will be afflicted by it when they are hounded, sexually abused, tormented, beaten, and sold by their parents or by slave traders. But so fear, poison, and hopelessness will also threaten the development of consciousness of many of you when you become dull and broken of reason. And this is not surprising, because you human beings will be pushed away from the truth more and more through the false, misleading, and irresponsible religions, sects, ideologies, and philosophies, Consequently, less and less of you will recognize the effective truth of the creational laws and recommendations, and these are therefore also constantly less followed. Thus the change for the better. Good and best takes a long time, because only when the majority of your earthly humanity strives for it, the great change for true learning of the truth, and for acting in this way follows. But for the time being, you human beings of the earth think of yourselves as God and do not know that this is only a humanly invented delusional figure, which has nothing to do with the effective all-encompassing creation or with universal consciousness. And still for some time you do not recognize that you are no more and no less than when you were born. Small, a human being, ignorant and helpless without the work of the creational laws and recommendations. And since you do not yet recognize this fact, you delude yourselves to be a deity, a power over life and death, and so you create and nurture evil, wage wars, thirst for vengeance, retribution, and blood, allow yourselves to be led by jealousy and anger, and at every opportunity reach for power, profit, and material wealth. You do not realize that in blind rage, you are destroying everything around you, and accepting the total destruction of the planet and all living beings, including yourselves, and inexorably and tremendously furthering everything on Earth through the boundless breeding of overpopulation. So it can be said of you human beings of Earth that you are tiny in your consciousness, in your reason, and in your mind. In contrast to this, however, in all your foolishness, in your unreasonableness, in your hatred, in your dissatisfaction and disharmony, as well as in your urge for revenge, retaliation, warlust, and rage, as well as in your destructive urge, you possess the powers of a giant. And in this way, you are taking giant strides into your existence and into the future of the third millennium, whereby you are completely mistaken and do not know which path you are really to take. Even though you have stuffed yourselves with all sorts of school knowledge, but which does not bring you knowledge of life and creation and its laws and recommendations. So you do not know why you live and die at all, because the world of creation-related becoming and passing is as foreign to you as the effective creative truth itself. When you in ignorance only curse about your life, then whimper again and wave your arms like lunatics. You fanatics among the believers in religions, sects, ideologies, and philosophies, many Christians, Jews, Muslims, Hindus, and Buddhists, as well as believers in their sects, you become more and more enemies of yourselves. Go at each other, commit terrorist acts and cut each other's throats, carry out bomb attacks and wage war in your own families and ranks. And all of you, in your religious and sectarian delusion, think that your faith is the only true one and that you must defend it with human blood. But you are completely alien to the real truth and do not know the creational laws and recommendations. Thus, death advances through you everywhere while you face the effective creative truth with doubts which you regard as an evil power. But thereby you will be excluded from human life and will be lawless, having nothing to sell for your delusion but your own life, which you throw away in suicidal acts. And you are rejected and cast out by all those who are not with you and who want peace, safety, and tranquility, whereby your threatening growling is of no use to you. You hear of the prophecies and predictions, but in your religious and sectarian blindness, you are not able to discern the effective truth, so you indulge only in your barbarism and continue to spread death and destruction. And many of you human beings of the earth, you close your eyes to it because you lull yourselves into a false sense of security. But still the fear and suspicion gnaws at you and pursues you step by step, so that you have neither rest nor peace. Verily, it will still take another 800 years before you human beings of the earth finally awaken and, by and large, slowly make an effort to grant justice to the creational truth and the laws of the creation and their recommendations. Only after this time will it be that the goblet of the truth, or the teaching of the true prophets, as well as the teaching of the Spirit as teaching of the truth, teaching of the Spirit, teaching of life, will slowly begin to bear fruit. Only then will you human beings learn to build good interpersonal and true personal relationships with one another, to understand one another, and then finally live in truth, peace, love, freedom, and harmony. Only then will it come about that you earthly humanity will become a unity, whereby it will also be that from all languages of all peoples, the best language will be chosen to make it the only uniform world language, while all other languages of all peoples will be preserved. And through this world language, every human beings will be able to communicate with each other, no matter to which people they belong. And that is then the time when you human beings of the earth fly through the wide space of the universe in good form and create new living space for yourselves. And that will be both on foreign worlds in the vastness of the universe, but also in and under the waters of the earth, as well as on the moon and in earthly orbit. And this is also the time when you human beings will generally grow taller and have a very old age, communicate peacefully with each other, and be friends and helpful to each other. The true and good knowledge among you human beings is also increasing, and you are gaining and discovering more and greater secrets of life, and of the creational laws, of existence, and of the universe. From this you learn, understand, and obey everything, through which you advance more and more to the creational laws and recommendations, understand them, use them, learn them, and obey them. But this is not the merit of you men, but that of you women, who take the staff of leadership and dignity, and guide the destiny of you human beings of the earth, because your feminine wisdom and your sense of love as well as peace, freedom, human dignity, equality, and harmony are directed and stop the airs and graces of you men with regard to war, violence, and all kinds of degeneration. Thus, after all the millennia of evil, degeneration, violence, disharmony, lack of love, unfreedom, and unpeacefulness, the woman radiates hope and happiness and lightness of life, in which now all the dreams are fulfilled, which are directed towards true love, peace, freedom, and harmony. But the time until then is long and arduous, because the way out of barbarism and into the good future is long and arduous. But you will find order again, together with the earth, with its climate, nature, its forests and plants, and the now pure and healthy waters, the desert areas that have been brought back to life, for everything is now aligned with the creational laws and recommendations and their fulfillment. And so, in the re-established order, you heal diseases and prevent epidemics before they appear, and each of you is competent to help yourselves, as each of you also gives help to your neighbor. And through all the change for the better, good and best, which you women of the earth accomplish, also the poverty of many of you men of the earth ends, because through the wisdom and goodness of women they are taken care of. Because now also in joy and true humanity giving is done, and no longer only taking and no longer being demanded back. And so, each one of you human beings is now there for his neighbor and also for the other fellow human beings in good interpersonal relationships, which is why loneliness no longer exists, and why you recognize and accept each other as human beings without conceit, with regard to ethnicity, skin color, opinion, language, or state of knowledge and education, etc. Verily, all this good is so near to you, if only you could grasp it, understand it, and apply it, which you are not yet able to do, and that is why the good is so near to you, and yet so far away, because you must first find the right way to it, as it is given to you by the creational laws and recommendations which you can read and obey in the open nature. You human beings of the earth, however, you are mistaken in your thoughts and feelings that you first have to suffer great damage and fall into chaos and catastrophes before you turn to the effective truth and follow it. Therefore, you need an iron fist to guide you, and this you find in the goblet of the truth, in the teaching of the prophets, and also in the Spirit teaching, which is the teaching of the truth, teaching of the Spirit. Teaching of life as it is given over billions of years, brought to Earth from a distant galaxy by Nocodemion and taught by 7 prophetic personalities from his spirit form lineage. And this teaching of the prophets teaches that you need not fear death because you have many lives. And so you will learn from the goblet of the truth and the spiritual teaching or the teaching of the truth, teaching of the spirit, teaching of life, and knowingly in the things that are about life and death. And so you are also aware of the creative and natural laws and recommendations which teach you that your spirit never ceases to exist, but continues to exist endlessly and ultimately merges with creation, the universal consciousness itself. Simyase Silver Star Center, 20th August 2008, 17:39 hours, Billy.
This is of correctness. Then it will also be understood what you are talking about when you call up the conversation reports and write them down. And what I want to say is, it is my wish that a good picture of you will be included in the work Goblet of the Truth. It should probably be possible that you can take a new picture until the 21st of September, which you can then put in your usual place in your workroom, where it will be picked up by someone I have assigned. Unfortunately, I cannot do it on my part, and neither can Njana and Florena. For my part, I am absent until the end of November, or at least until the last week of November. Njana and Florena will be back a few days later than me. The picture, or the pictures if you take several, will be sent to me, according to which I can then decide.